Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Mr. Wizard's Workshop. Last week's episode was part two of Is Life Coaching a Scam? So, in that episode, I listed and described the 10 things that I'm looking for when I want to find a coach that is right for me. So, I'll flash them up on the screen. I won't spend any real time covering those, but I will put the link to last week's episode in the description below for this week's episode. I also listed the 3 things which I do not factor heavily into my decision-making process. They are advanced academic degrees, book publications, and coaching certification. These things for me are at best mildly interesting. Coaching certifications, it's an interesting and complex subject. And I promised in last week's episode to do a deep dive discussion on that, my thoughts on the whole issue of certification in this week's episode. So my perspective on this is primarily from the point of view of a consumer. I'm someone who is considering hiring a coach. However, this will also be potentially useful information for an aspiring coach who's considering getting certified, exploring the different options. So your action item for this week will be very basic. That is, decide for yourself whether your coach, if and when you go out to engage one, must have a coaching certification, and if so, which certification you consider to be most meaningful. If you get some benefit from this recording, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. So I have the live attendees on mute as I'm presenting the core content. You can drop questions into the Q&A box. And at the end of this presentation, I'll check the Q&A and then open the floor up for a lively discussion if anyone has any questions or anything they want to dive into in more detail. So I also am on mute. This portion of the workshop is a recording which I made yesterday. So I'm lurking in the background watching. During my 44-year career in IT, I earned a number of different certifications, including PMP, Project Management Professional, and Scrum Master certification. I got most of those certifications in the course of my duties as an employee for different organizations. So someone I reported to would say, hey, I think it would be a good idea if you attended this training program and got this certification. Unless I thought it was something totally useless, I would say, okie dokie. I see they offer training in Orlando or Maui or San Francisco. Should I go ahead and have the travel department book my flight and hotel? That, by the way, is called the assumptive close. So once I became an independent consultant, a hired gun, I became very selective about which certifications I wanted to invest my time and effort in, since it was on my last position as an employee before I became an independent consultant was as the director of project services for a regional IT consulting company. They hired me to build, grow, and manage their project-based solutions. As a totally unrelated aside, when I started, they were making $0 a year from project-based engagement. The year that I left, they had $26 million in revenue from project-based solutions. And I got $0 in bonuses and some worthless stock options. So because I was building their PM organization from scratch, I had to hire a dozen PMs over the course of about a year and then 5 or 6 more over the next year. And on average, I conducted 4 interviews for every one hire. Most of the candidates I interviewed had the PMP certification. However, I would and did interview candidates that didn't have a PMP if they had work experience which impressed me. And this was especially true if they were recommended to me by someone that I respected. And I hired 3, maybe 4 people into the role of PM who did not initially have a PMP. I did have them study for and take the PMP exam after they came on board because the PMI body of knowledge provides a standard project management vocabulary, process framework, and core competencies for project management. So I also took a pass on several candidates who did have PMP. Why? Because having the PMP did not mean they were truly skilled and effective PM. Some of the people I passed on were just mediocre, but a few of them were like clueless get. I remember one interview that I had a couple of the PMs that reported to me sitting in on, and after the guy was escorted out of my office by our HR person, we all just looked at each other and started laughing. So what does all this have to do with coaching certification, you might be asking yourself? Well, I got the opportunity to both brag and whine a little, so that was good. But there's a serious point from the story. The key point here is that there is one and only one standards and accreditation body in the project management world, the PMI, Project Management Institute. And it is truly the gold standard for project management certification. It is really the one and only core certification that matters. There's some specialty certifications you can get. For example, the Scrum Master certification, which I mentioned a little earlier. And I still did not make my hiring decision primarily on whether or not a project management candidate had this certification. From a principle that I'm laying down for you here, from direct professional experience, is that having a certification should not be the determining factor in selecting a coach for yourself. It is, at best, a nice to have. Another principle is that it is critically important to actually interview someone you're considering hiring. And these principles are even more applicable in the domain of life coaching. That's because, unlike the two certification examples I use from the IT world, there is no one life coaching accreditation body. There are at least four that I'm aware of. ICF, which is International Coach Federation, and they have, the last time I looked, because it's constantly changing, 3 levels of individual accreditation credentials: associate certified, professional certified, and master certified coach. There's the IAC, which is International Association of Coaching. They have 2 levels of certification. There's the EMCC, which is a European Mentoring and Coaching Council. They have 4 levels of individual accreditation. And then there's the CCE, the Center for Credentialing and Education. For the coaching field, they have one specific certification, board certified coach. And there are hundreds of companies which offer some form of training for a coaching or life coaching certification. Let's make a quick exploration of the world of online training for coaching certifications. I Googled initially online training for coaching certification. There are literally thousands of hits. I mean, this is page 1. If you hop over to page 10, it's still going strong. All right, some of the related searches. That's International Coaching Federation, one of the 4 accreditation bodies I mentioned earlier. So this is a particular organization accredited under ICF, and here's their basic offerings. So this is good. You can just get a quick feel for the levels they offer. So the basic one, and typically I see most companies are charging around $1,000 for this one, from $975 to $12,970. Basic thought or point I'm making here is that it's not cheap. And I think for some people, it could be beneficial. In reviewing the detailed curriculum of several of these companies, they're not offering me anything that I either don't already have because of my career capital, and I'm going to talk about career capital shortly after this, or they're not offering me anything that I didn't already get from a couple of other coaching programs that I've signed up for and participated in. That would be Eben Pagan's virtual coach program, 120 days, Christian Mickelson's program, neither one of which have an ICF accreditation. However, if you go by level of success, I think both Eben and Christian will probably kick most ICF certified coaches' ass. They have tremendous experience and success, business and in the coaching domain. What I got from them, and I have a certification from Eben Pagan, virtual coach program. I don't make a big deal out of it. I mean, I post it on my website, my About Me, because I did the work, and, it's good stuff. But for me and my purposes, going through any of these ICF programs would not actually give me anything that I don't. The cost benefit, not there. For someone who doesn't have a level of experience coaching, mentoring, managing, working with people in a one-on-one and group environment, it could be worth it. But I would never do it to get the rubber stamp accreditation. Just because someone has an ICF accreditation doesn't mean that they're going to be a good or great coach or the right coach for you. So I mentioned that one reason I'm not drawn to getting even more coaching certification is that I already have the career capital in place, which the training for these certifications are offered. So I learned about the concept of career capital from Cal Newport's excellent book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. Career capital, this is his definition description, are the skills that you have that are both rare and valuable and that can be used as leverage in defining your career. It's crucial to developing a successful career, one marked by creativity, impact, and autonomy. So basic economic theory tells us that if you want something that's both rare and valuable, you need something rare and valuable to offer in return. This is supply and demand 101. So that falls, if you want a great job or career, you need something of great value to offer in return. My 44-year career in IT gave me most, but not all, but most of the career capital that I needed for me to pivot over to having a successful and productive coaching career. What I didn't have on board already, I was able to get through the 2 coaching programs that I mentioned earlier that I signed up for and complete. So let me recap. There is no gold standard coaching accreditation body. ICF will say they're the gold standard, best, I would say the silver standard or bronze standard. There are some good ones, and there are some fly-by-night, made-up bodies like the closed cover before striking Coaching Institute. There are excellent coaching programs which offer their own certification, which do not have an outside accreditation body like the ICF. The 2 I have specific experience with and can highly recommend are Eben Pagan's Virtual Coach Program and Christian Mickelson's Free Sessions at Sale program. So the training and coaching practice, which I got from these 2 programs, is, I believe, as good or better than what I would get if I completed one of, say, the ICF certification. So the only reason I would invest the time in those programs would be for the rubber stamp of the certification. And I just don't believe that that significantly improves my credibility. So I think having one or more coaching accreditations is a good thing. It shows that someone has invested the time and energy to improve their craft, unless it's one of those bogus 3-day wonder training programs. Having one or more accreditations does not guarantee that someone has integrity, is highly skilled, or is the right coach for you. The only way for you to hire the right coach is for you to actually interview them, to interact with them, preferably in a Zoom meeting, not just a phone call, to see them in action and make your own assessment. There's an important final point I'd like to make here. I think that the biggest misconception in the coaching industry is that simply cutting a check and talking to someone for 30 minutes or an hour a week will change your life and transform your results simply because you've paid and started on a program. It's like the midlife crisis guys who buy a shiny new Corvette and expect that women will flock to them and their love life will be magically transform. It's not going to happen. So there's something really important which you need to understand before you hire a coach. Nothing in your life will change unless you do. You could spend $1 million a year to have Tony Robbins, Eben Pagan, Christian Mickelson show up at your house and coach. These are people who have a proven track record of success with thousands and thousands of people. But this simply wouldn't be enough. If you don't show up to your weekly coaching calls with a willingness to be present, take action, and then actually take actions, nothing will ever change. The best strategy, tactics, and resources will do nothing unless you are willing to take actions and apply them consistently. So I hope this has been helpful and gives you some good food for thought. And now I'm going to open up the floor for questions and discussion.